My own daughter looked me dead in the eye and said, "That room is my mother-in-law's now. Pack your things." So I set my coffee down and stared at the door I had paid to paint. My name is Margaret. I'm 67, and that door opened into the only quiet corner I've had since I sold my house after my hip surgery. The scent of last night's apple pie still hung in the air while the words hit me like a shove. Sarah stood in the hallway with her arms crossed, Jason hovering behind her like a shadow. And behind them, a suitcase with a bright Florida tag that read, Evelyn. I smiled, folded my apron, and decided not to move an inch until I tell you how we got here. If you told me a year ago that my own child would side with her in-laws over me, I'd have laughed and offered you a slice of pecan pie. After my husband Frank passed and my hip gave out, Sarah begged me to move in, said the spare room would be mine until I got back on my feet. I sold the little ranch house in Ohio, packed my recipe cards, and came to their place in a North Carolina cul-de-sac. Flag on the porch, HOA emails every Sunday. We agreed I'd help with Liam after school and chip in from my Social Security, and they'd give me a door I could close. Jason nodded, a polite man with a firm handshake and a love for Sunday football, and I believed him. I didn't know his mother Evelyn thought my room was a revolving door. My mornings were simple. Folgers in the drip machine, NPR murmuring in the kitchen, and the New York Times crossword in ink because pencils feel like doubt. I walked the dog, watered Sarah's wilting succulents, and set a pot roast in the slow cooker so dinner would be ready before Liam's Little League. At noon, I ironed Jason's shirts the way my mother taught me, crisp collars and a little spray of starch just so. I taught Liam how to tie his laces, and we split a Costco churro in the minivan pickup line like it was contraband. On Fridays, I brought banana bread to the neighbors, and on Sundays, I saved us a pew near the back at St. Andrew's. I was the kind of help that doesn't make noise, the kind that keeps a house from unraveling. Then Evelyn arrived with her perfume of airport duty-free and opinions, calling me dear, like a waitress, and measuring every corner with her eyes. She announced she'd be staying for a while to help, which turned into her parking herself on my chair and calling my room the guest suite. I found my quilt folded on the washer and her suitcase on my rug, and Sarah said we'd figure it out, because family compromises. The compromise, it seemed, was me. A whispered suggestion that I take the basement couch for now, since stairs are hard, while Evelyn settled upstairs. When I said no, Sarah's cheeks flushed the same pink as when she was 3 and wanted a candy bar, and that's when she said it. That room is my mother-in-law's now. Pack your things. And the house went so quiet I could hear the ice in the fridge drop. This is the story of how a woman who raised a daughter on casseroles and carpool learned to draw a line in permanent marker. If you've ever felt someone try to erase you from your own life, pull up a chair because you'll want to see what I did next. I am not a doormat, and I didn't sell my home and my memories to be folded into a laundry room. I reached for my phone, the texts where Sarah begged me to move in, and the little notebook where I track every bill I've paid. Stay with me, hit subscribe and tap the bell, because family or not, nobody gets to evict a grandmother with a sentence. And trust me, what I did next made Evelyn drop that Florida suitcase like it was full of snakes. I did not raise my voice. I took my time, wiped my hands on the apron I'd folded like a flag, and set my coffee back on the counter. I looked at that door, my door, painted in a soft robin's egg blue I'd picked and paid for, because the spare room had felt like a storage closet until I made it a place you could breathe in. You should know the color came from a paint chip I carried in my purse for 3 weeks, one that reminded me of the bathroom Frank and I painted the spring we learned Sarah liked boys with guitars. It dried into a boundary. It said, "That's Margaret's." I turned the knob and felt the familiar smoothness, a little nick by the latch where Liam had banged it with his plastic bat one afternoon, and I kept the door open like a wedge holding back a tide. "Sarah," I said, not unkindly, "this is not a good sentence you just said." She shifted the way she does when she knows she's gone too far, that nervous tremble in her knee visible even when she thinks she's a steel beam. But her chin stayed up. Behind her, Jason's eyes dropped to the Florida tag like it had something to confess, and Evelyn's suitcase pulsed there like a bright, breathing thing. "It's not up for debate, Mom," Sarah said, swallowing. Looking at the stairs, "It's just safer if you take the basement couch for now. We'll reassess after Christmas." "Basement couch? With what bathroom?" I asked. "There is a bathroom down there, half-finished, a toilet that doesn't quite sit flush, and a sink that drips, a silverfish graveyard along the baseboards." "We'll make it cozy," Jason offered, almost in a whisper. "Like coziness is a blanket you can drape over disrespect." "It won't be long," Evelyn added, smiling with her teeth pressed together. We just need my suite set up. I don't do basements. I have allergies. She had arrived 2 days earlier, perfume like something a rich aunt sprays in department stores when they want attention. She'd barely placed her luggage down before she opened my pantry and began rearranging my spices, declaring the cumin was stale and the oregano cheap. I'll place an Amazon order, dear, she said, smiling at me like I was a server who'd forgotten a side of fries. Real spices, sustainable ones. Let's elevate the kitchen. I had blinked and smiled. I can share a spice rack. She'd also stood at my door the previous evening, rapping her knuckles like a banker. I need to see if your closet can handle my winter things. Florida winters are different, dear, but I still keep cashmere. Jason, get the tape measure. Jason had frowned, measuring under his breath because numbers give him something to do when feelings are too loud. He is a good man at heart, you should know. At least he was when I first met him. He bought me flowers the first time they hosted me for Sunday pot roast, called me Mrs. Thatcher even when I told him to call me Margaret. He fixes the leaky sink. He sets up the folding chairs before church chili cook-offs. He will drive you to urgent care at midnight. He is also the kind of man who worries his mother will withdraw her love like a bank loan and leave him with late fees. He is the product of 1,000 sighs he learned to obey when he was a boy. Mom, Sarah said now, cadence clipped. Evelyn is here to help with Liam. It's logical. You're still recovering. Recovering from ironing Jason's shirts? I said, eyebrows up. I was not proud of the sharpness in my tone. It snuck out. Don't do that, she said. Don't make me the bad guy. We have to think long term. We're beyond grateful for your help, but Evelyn is family too. There it was, too. That little word like a crumb of cake that tells you someone else got the slice with frosting. Of course she's family, I said, careful. I have never said otherwise. But this room, this door, this was the one thing you said would be mine. You told me I could close it. I'm closing it now. Dear, Evelyn said, stepping forward like a cat hearing the can opener. You're being territorial over a guest room. We're all adults here. Jason and Sarah need me. You can take the basement for a bit. It's going to be the nursery upstairs soon anyway. Nursery? That was new. Sarah's eyes flashed, then settled. Jason's ears got the shade of a cooked shrimp. Nursery? I repeated. Evelyn clasped her hands like a prayer. Oh, did I spoil the surprise? A sigh like a violin string being plucked. We're being proactive, that's all. You're wonderful with Liam, dear, but Sarah shouldn't have to stress about splits and pickups. With a new baby, we need order. I'm good at order. Order, in her mouth, is a set of marching boots. I breathed. I have learned to close my eyes for a second and let the first sentence go like you let a sparrow out a window. The second sentence is usually the one you mean. Evelyn, I said, you've been here 2 days and already placed your suitcase on my rug. That rug is from my old living room, the one where Frank used to lie on Sundays with a book on his chest and the Browns losing in the background. You can call it a guest suite. I call it a room where I sleep and pray and keep my bones in line. You can help yourself to the pot roast, but you cannot help yourself to my door. Mom, Sarah said, voice pleading now. This is how she reels you back, with the voice she used when she was 8 and lost her lunch money. This is turning into drama, and you promised me we'd avoid drama. I laughed, not loud, more like a bubble in my throat. I promised to avoid drama, not erasure. Silence. The refrigerator hummed like a lake in summer. Let's all breathe, Jason said, palms up. It's not like we're throwing you out, Margaret. I glanced at the Florida tag again. Evelyn in bold, all caps, the way you label Tupperware when you're afraid someone will eat your leftovers. You should know why this hit me the way it did. When I sold my ranch in Ohio, I sold the little peach tree Frank planted when Sarah was born, and the squeaky screen door that kept June bugs out and memories in. I sold the shed where I hid Christmas presents and the basement where our washing machine danced like a drunk uncle. I sold it because my hip surgery had me seeing stars when I climbed stairs, and because the doctor said, "Do you have someone?" And I thought of Sarah's text. Come stay with us. Your room, doors you can close, her exact words. I kept that text. I tucked it in my notebook with all the little things that make a life feel ledgered. I paid them what I could, in money and quiet work and casseroles. I am not prideful, but I am not a charity case either. There is a difference between being helped and being handled. Evelyn studied me like a vase she was trying to decide whether to keep or donate. You're making this hard, she said, softer now. dangerous. Evelyn, I said, do you need this room because your condo board in Florida is giving you trouble? I asked it even though I didn't want the answer. You see things when you are the kind of woman who irons a man's shirts. Small stains, almost invisible. A blink, a flick, a twitch around her mouth. What are you implying? She asked. Yesterday you were on speaker with someone about special assessments and Hurricane Ian premiums, and you said, and forgive me if I misquote, I'm not throwing good money after bad for a bunch of retirees in pastel polos. You said you needed to land somewhere sturdy for the winter. This is a sturdy house. She smiled sharp. I am landing with my son. Is that a crime? No, I said, but you landing shouldn't take my landing strip away. Sarah exhaled. A long theatrical sigh like someone at yoga who wants everyone to know she's breathing. Okay, we're spiraling. We're tired. Mom, go take a walk. Evelyn, let's get your things upstairs and start unpacking. Jason, grab the toolkit. I did not go take a walk. I pivoted and went into my room, and shut the door. It clicked, a sound I imagine sailors like when they dock. I took out my notebook, its cover faded and soft, and I laid out the facts. On September 15th, I transferred $300 to Sarah and Jason to chip in for utilities. On October 2nd, $250 for HOA dues when their email dinged with fines for a trash can left out past midnight. 3 times I paid for groceries when the pantry went echoey. Costco receipts like banners in my purse. I had text messages from Sarah in all caps in July. Come, please, when my hip was still a rumor. There was a note where Jason said, "We got you, Mom," and it made my throat go tight because Jason calls his mother Mom, but he called me Mom too, and I let him because love is a big room if you keep doors open. I took out my recipe cards, the ones with cinnamon smudges and grief stains, and I put the one for pot roast under my notebook like a placemat. I took a photo of my door. I am not a lawyer, but I know how to tell a story with evidence. But before we came to this morning's showdown, I want you to understand the weeks that pinched me into this stance. The small rocks in the shoe that make a walk miserable. Evelyn has a way of sitting in a room like it owes her a seat. She drapes a cotton throw over her knees and takes over the arm of the couch like she's docking a ship. She calls me dear in the same tone you use when you ask a waitress for more ice. She corrects my pronunciation of quinoa and clicks her tongue at the brand of olive oil I buy. I grew up with olive trees, dear, she said, even though she grew up in Tallahassee and the closest olive tree there is probably in a print at Home Goods. She criticized my pot roast for being comforting but pedestrian, then ate 2 servings. She told Liam, "Go ask real grandma if you can have another cookie." And when he said, "Which one?" she laughed like a chandelier. Later in the kitchen, she said to me quietly, "You know, he'll need to learn to differentiate. He's my first grandson, but you're what, second? You had a head start." Microaggressions is a big word, for little slices of paper that add up to a stack you have to push against. She moved my knitting from the armchair to the ottoman with 2 fingers as if it had germs. She, accidentally, donated my extra set of sheets to Goodwill because they were threadbare quaint, and Jason apologized with a shrug because he doesn't check donation boxes. He just loads them. She ordered a new coffee maker online, one with a touch screen that looks like a spaceship. And when I set up the Folgers the next morning, she said, "Oh, sweetheart, we're not in the 70s anymore." She put a framed photo of her and Jason at his college graduation on the mantle in front of my wedding picture, like her son's moment outranked my 30 years with Frank. Sarah didn't notice until I mentioned it. Then she said, "That's not a big deal." Those Sundays at St. Andrews, I started to feel like a ghost in my own pew. Evelyn came once, made a show of hugging the pastor's wife, and whispered, the way people whisper when they want to be overheard, that the choir could use fresh blood. She asked me, "Do you understand the hymns okay?" And I said I'd been singing them since she was in a prom dress. On the way home, she told Jason that Catholics do music better, and I said, "We're Episcopalians." And she said, "Same thing," even though that's like calling peaches and nectarines the same because they have stones. And then there were the finances. You could smell the anxiety like ozone before a summer storm. Jason left for work earlier and came home later. Sarah checked her bank app like it told fortunes, and Evelyn's phone never stopped pinging. I heard phrases through walls because walls in suburbia are polite but not deaf. Bridge loan, refinancing, variable rate, childcare costs, HOA violations, soccer registration, orthodontics. One afternoon, I took the trash bins in and opened a letter with the HOA logo, those family crests of suburban kingdoms, and it was another violation, a basketball hoop left up overnight. The fine was $50. It was on top of the $150 for the lawn being an inch over regulation length. I left it on the counter with a cheerful note, and that night Evelyn said like a prosecutor, "Did you open our mail?" And I said, "It's our mail when it tells us how much we owe for the length of our grass." And she pursed her lips like a lemon. Then came the hint that wasn't a hint. I found a man in my room. Not a stranger. No, worse. A man with a tape measure wearing a polo with the logo of Homes by Neely. "Oh," he said, startled to find me sitting on my bed with a crossword and a cup of tea. "I was told the guest suite was free right now. I'm measuring for the Murphy bed and built-ins." I asked who told him that, and he said, "Mrs. Collins." And I said, "Which one?" And he did not get the joke. I took this to Sarah. "You're getting built-ins where I sleep?" I asked, calm. "It's just exploratory," she said, slipping a gold hoop back into her ear. "Evelyn knows a guy. It would make the room flexible. And if we do have a baby, it will be a nursery eventually." "You're building a future with wood," I said. "I can hear the screws." "We're allowed to plan," she said. "Not on top of me," I said. You can see how an old woman becomes an obstacle in the eyes of people who want their lives to flow like Instagram stories. It's not malicious at first, it's logistical. But logistics are where the heart goes to sleep if you let it. In the middle of all this, I did something I advise you to do if you ever feel yourself being moved like a chair. I called Darlene. Now, Darlene is my friend from St. Andrews. A widow like me who wears her hair cropped and gray like a crown and who runs the church's food pantry with a clipboard and grace. She knows the difference between, "We're short this week," and "They need us." She picks up when you call even if she's in aisle 3 of Harris Teeter. "Darlene," I said when her voice came on bright as sunlight through stained glass, "I'm not asking for casserole. I'm asking for clarity." "What's she done now?" Darlene asked, and the she needed no name. So I told her. I told her about the door, about the suitcase, about nursery and built-ins, about the basement with the dripping sink and the silverfish. I told her about the pear-scented microaggressions and the spice rack. I told her about the HOA letters and the man in my room with a measuring tape and how I felt like a couch waiting for a price tag. She was quiet, listening. Darlene is a good listener. You can hear her nodding. "Honey," she said finally, "you are not overreacting. You are being erased in cursive. I need you to do a few things. 1. Document everything. You've already got your notebook. Keep adding. Text them your understanding of your arrangement so there's a record. 2. Check your mail. Make sure nothing has been redirected. I've seen it. 3. Call the area agency on aging. Don't make a face, Margaret. Call them. They'll give you a tenant advocate. Yes, you're a tenant. You contribute. You've resided there longer than a week. 4. Do not go to that basement. That's a trick. Once you move, well, she's already in the basement. Keep your door, lock it. Should I change my Social Security direct deposit? I asked. Keep it as is for this minute, she said, but log in and check. Set up alerts if you haven't, and call me if you even suspect they're trying anything like representative payee. I'll drive over and stand in your doorway like a linebacker. I laughed and then I teared up because there's nothing like someone saying, I'll stand in your doorway. Do I confront Sarah? I asked. You love Sarah. Talk to her as if she's your daughter, not as if she's Evelyn's daughter-in-law. Ask questions that make her say what she's doing. When did you get so wise? I asked. Since I spent 58 Sundays a year watching people turn churches into stages, she said, and I could tell she was moving through her kitchen, probably wiping her table clean of breadcrumbs as we spoke, aligning the salt and pepper just so. And Darlene, I said, what if they really want me gone? Then you've got rights, she said, and you've got me. And if they forget who you are, you remind them with a sentence they can't unhear. After I hung up with Darlene, I felt like someone had put a hand at the small of my back. There is courage in being witnessed. You asked for a symbol, and maybe you think the door is too obvious. But the door is the thing. When Frank died, my body learned that love can feel like a house with all its doors blown open in a storm. Everyone can come in and everything can topple. The door here, at Sarah's, was a new door to hold that storm back. I had paid for the paint, yes, but more than that, I had chosen it. A woman without a door is a woman without a spine. That's what I decided. So back to the kitchen and the suitcase and the ice maker sounding like distant artillery. I stepped out of my room, my notebook in my hand, and I said, "If you're asking me to move to the basement, then you're asking me to give up what you promised me. I will not. If you want me out of the room, you can give me written notice, and we can discuss terms like people who understand leases." Jason's mouth opened. Sarah's face pale. Evelyn, a small smile. "A lease?" she said. "This is family, dear. We don't do leases." "No," I said. "We do texts and money transfers and promises. Those also count." "Okay," Jason started. "Let's slow down." Evelyn's suitcase sat like a dog by a door, waiting. "Since we're being honest," Evelyn said, smoothing her blouse, "we have been discussing a better arrangement. For everyone. You're a risk, dear. The stairs, the bathroom. We're thinking of Brookdale by the highway. They have a new wing with a nice activities calendar. Sarah and Jason can visit and bring Liam, and you'll be around people your age, which is healthier. You can knit and gossip, and we can turn this space into what the family needs. A nursery, an office, a place that has a future. You can keep some things here, of course, but—" "Brookdale?" I said, and I felt my voice go strange. There's an oboe sound that comes out of me when I am holding tears in my hands like hot plates. "We toured last week," Sarah said, voice small. "Just to see." "You toured," I repeated, and the word felt like a boat someone else was rowing. "And did you sign?" "No," she said too quickly. "Not yet." Evelyn looked amused. "There's a waiting list, but we can skip it if we decide by Friday. There's a deposit, refundable, dear." "How much?" I asked. Jason shifted. $2,000, he said. "And did you put that on your card?" I asked. "We put it on mine," Evelyn said, sing-song. "I believe in investing in family. I thanked every angel I do and don't believe in that I had started writing the dates down. I felt heat behind my eyes, but I kept my face cool. "And when were you going to tell me?" I asked Sarah. "When we knew more," she said. "We didn't want to scare you. We wanted to get information first. You thought the appropriate time to tell me I'm being relocated is after you've measured for Murphy beds?" I asked, and the sarcasm sat on my tongue like a bitter almond. "That's not information gathering. That's sneaking." Evelyn rolled her eyes like a teenager with expensive skincare. "Don't be dramatic, dear. You make everything a betrayal. This is logistics." "Evelyn," I said, "you are very comfortable discussing my life as a series of furniture rearrangements. And you are very comfortable acting as if your old ways are our future." She snapped, the sugar in her voice melting off. "This house has a plan. You're not part of it long term. You were always temporary, Margaret. You must know that. There, the raw spine of it, temporary." I felt the word hit like a plank dropped in a pool, a splash that wets your face and wakes you. In the corner of my eye, I saw Liam's little sneakers in a heap by the door, Velcro curling up like tongues. I thought of our Costco churros, of his laces I'd taught him to tie, bunny ears pulled tight, and something steadied in me. "I do know I am not a piece of luggage," I said, looking at the Florida tag like it might flare. "I know I am your family, Sarah. For 35 years I have been there. When you had strep in 4th grade and vomited on your spelling book. When Jason lost his job 3 years ago, and we all ate rice and beans, and I brought baked potatoes and chili, so Liam could feel like it was a party. When you cried on my couch after your last miscarriage, Sarah, and I held your hair and rubbed your back while you said it wasn't fair, you do not get to call me temporary." Sarah's face crumpled for a second, then smoothed, as if she had an iron in her pocket. "Don't bring that up," she said, voice flat. "Don't weaponize it." "Don't weaponize your grief?" I repeated. "I am not weaponizing. I am reminding." "I'm done being manipulated," she said, and when she did, I saw Evelyn's script in her mouth. "You always make everything about you." I let out a small laugh that had no humor in it. "I make everything about me? You are trying to move me to a basement couch and then to a senior living facility so you can have a nursery and your mother can have a suite. I am trying to keep a door." Evelyn leaned in low. "No one is evicting you. We are planning. The problem is you don't plan. You nest. And then everyone has to navigate around your nests. It's selfish. And if you want to be petty, fine, let's be petty. You are not on the mortgage. You are not on the deed. You do not have standing here. You're a guest." And there it was, the humiliating offense, the direct hit. Guest. A word like snowfall on a hot day. It smothers and contradicts. It was designed to wound because it drips with the pretense of hospitality while it erases your roots. "Say it again," I said softly. I was not giving her a second chance to aim. I was giving myself a second chance to believe she had really said it. "You're a guest," she repeated, and this time she added, "and a burden. We took you in out of kindness. Remember that." Jason flinched like you flinch when a glass drops and you know it'll shatter. "Mom," he said to Evelyn. "Come on." But Evelyn's eyes were bright with victory. She had revealed a real intention and was giddy at the taste of it. I could feel you all leaning in, if you were here on my kitchen tile with me. I could feel every grandmother who ever pressed a palm against a door and said no. I could feel Frank, absurdly, with his bald head and his soft belly saying, "Well now," which is what he said when he decided to speak in a way nobody could spin. "You want to talk standing?" I said, and then I set the notebook on the counter. I opened it. I turned it so they could see. "I stand on this. On the texts where you asked me to come. On the money I've put in. On the agreements we made. On the work I do here that would cost you if I charged, and I could charge, because I have value. On the love I pour. On the fact that Liam looks for me in the pickup line the way kids look for Santa. On the actual laws of this state regarding constructive eviction and tenants at will. On my door. And I stand on this. I put my hand on my recipe box. On the past that built you into a woman who has the nerve to look me in the eye and say I'm a guest." Sarah opened her mouth. No sound came out. She closed it. Then she looked away. Her gaze slid to the window where the cul-de-sac showed a slice of America. A flag luffing, a neighbor walking a bulldog, a teenager in a hoodie flipped like armor. She looked at the Florida tag and then at the stairs. She looked everywhere but at me. "Here's what we're going to do," I said. "We're going to stop this conversation until we can have it without anyone calling me a burden. We're going to get clarity about Brookdale and whether you put money down and whether any paperwork exists with my name. We're going to agree that until then, my door stays closed to anyone with a measuring tape. And we're going to accept that if you decide you want me gone, you will do so legally and kindly, with time and with help and with a conscience." "Or what?" Evelyn asked, amused. "Or I will call the people who know how to make sure women like me don't get pushed downstairs," I said. "And I will call Darlene. And if you think Darlene can't make a scene at St. Andrews, that will get back to your PTA friends and your HOA committee. You don't know how fast reputations travel in cul-de-sacs. I may be a guest in your mind, but I am a pillar in circles you don't even see. Do not make me prove it." Evelyn sputtered, almost laughed. "Are you threatening me with church ladies?" "I'm telling you I have allies," I said steady. "Which is what women have when the world tells us to be grateful for crumbs." Jason put a hand to his forehead like he had a headache that had a mother. Can we please not blow this up more?" It was then that a new piece of the betrayal slid into the room like a fog. Sarah's phone dinged. She glanced at it, then paled. I saw the sender, Brookdale Senior Living, and the preview of the message. "Reminder of today's 2 p.m. intake call for Margaret Thatcher. Please have Social Security info ready." I looked at her. "You gave them my name." She flinched. "They needed it for the tour list." "You booked an intake," I said. "That is not a tour. That is a process. And in that process, they often ask if I need a representative payee, which would allow someone to control my Social Security benefits. Were you going to sit on the call and answer for me?" Her eyes filled with tears. She's not a crier, so when she does, her face looks like a cracked mask. "Mom, Evelyn said." Evelyn made a little tisk. "I said nothing except that you should prepare, dear. These financially complicated things aren't for the faint of heart. Your mother is not good with details. She writes recipes in ink as if nothing changes." I laughed then, a real incredulous laugh, not because it was funny, but because the audacity was a marvel, like the Grand Canyon is a marvel. "You were going to sit on a call about my future without me, with my Social Security number, to discuss how to place me, like I'm a couch, and you call me faint of heart." "Mom," Sarah said again, sobbing now, hand on her belly, though I don't know if there's a baby there or if it's just habit. "I'm drowning. You don't see it. The money, the pressure, the HOA, the job. Jason is up for a promotion that might move us in 6 months, and I can't. Evelyn said she'd help, that she'd handle things, that she'd take things off my plate, and I let her. I let her because I'm tired." "I see you," I said. "I see the circles under your eyes. I see the way you clench your jaw at night. I hear the tooth grinding through walls. I see you trying to build a life like a Pinterest picture and the edges are fraying. I see you. But here's what I also see. I am not the thing you toss to make the picture better. I am not clutter. I am not an old quilt you donate because someone on Instagram told you minimalism makes you a better mother. Evelyn rubbed her temples as if this all bored her. Enough, she said. This is a waste of time. The intake is at 2. We'll be ready. Margaret, if you do not cooperate, we will do what is necessary. There are ways. Are there? I said. Because I just took a picture of your screen with that reminder, and I will forward it to Darlene and to the Area Agency on Aging, and to anyone who listens when a woman says, they're trying to move me like furniture. And Evelyn, since we're airing everything, do you want to know what my friend at church told me? Brookdale offers referral bonuses to family advocates. They cut checks to the person who brings in a resident. Is that the cash you're angling for to cover your condo assessment? The room shifted. It actually did. Air is not neutral, it leans. Evelyn's face went still, then pebbled. She did not blush. She stiffened. How dare you? It's a question, I said. A fair one. You seem to have an appetite for other people's rooms and for bonuses. Sarah looked at her mother-in-law, then at me, then at her phone with its little glass screen like a mirror. Mom? She asked, and this mom was meant for Evelyn. Evelyn waved a hand. There is a stipend if you're involved, she said, airy. It's nothing, and it would go to Jason and Sarah, obviously. You didn't tell them, I said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn shrugged. Jason's lips thinned. Suddenly his spine showed up. What stipend? He asked, and there was something old in his voice, something from before he learned to harmonize with his mother. Evelyn's jaw went tight. Jason, don't be naive. We're geniuses if we use all the tools available to us. This is not exploitation. It's efficiency. I could feel my heart pounding in my neck. There's your word, Evelyn. Efficiency. That's all I am to you, a variable to optimize. She looked right at me and delivered the coup de grace, not yelling, not hissing, just precise. You are dead weight we've carried long enough. Jason closed his eyes. Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. I did not cry. I did not break. I put my palm flat against the blue door, the paint cool and steady, and I pictured the brush strokes that made it. I pictured Frank dipping the brush, the way he always said, slow and steady. The way he penciled the tape lines even when I said eyeballing was enough. Then here is what I did next, I said, gentle as a knife. I called Darlene on speaker. I pressed the green button and put the phone on the counter, speaker up. My hand was steady. It surprised even me, how steady. St. Andrew's Pantry, Darlene answered, breath a little short like she'd hustled from the back room. If you're calling to tell me we're out of green beans again, I'll stage a coup at Harris Teeter. You're on speaker, I said, with Sarah, Jason, and Evelyn. Oh, she said, brightening. Good. Saves me a trip. Hello, sinners. Darlene, Sarah said, wiping at her cheeks. Please don't. I'm not here to inflame, Darlene said, which is exactly what she was here to do. I'm here to clarify. Margaret, tell me. They want my door, I said. They want my room. They have an intake at 2 with Brookdale under my name, which they were going to do without me. Evelyn has told me I am a guest and dead weight. There's a suitcase at my threshold like a battering ram. They want me on the basement couch until further notice. I suspect there's a bonus involved if they move me. Also, a man came yesterday to measure for built-ins where my bed is. Silence like the hush just before an organ drops into a hymn. Evelyn, Darlene said, sugar syrup sweet, the kind of sweet that eats enamel. This is Darlene Collins from St. Andrews. You don't know me, but I know you just enough. If you are attempting to move a woman out of her established room without legal notice, you are flirting with unlawful eviction and elder abuse. Don't let the word elder scare you. It's not a number, it's a line. You're standing on the wrong side of it. Evelyn glanced at the phone as if it had asked her for money. I don't recognize your authority, she said. This is a family matter. Families are where most of the bad things happen quietly, Darlene said. That's why people like me make noise. Jason ran his hand over his head like he could smooth his thoughts. We're not evicting Margaret. That's a strong word. Strong words for strong actions, Darlene said. Margaret, have you paid money into the household? Have you resided there beyond a week? Do you have your own room where your things live? Yes, I said. Then she has rights, Darlene said. even if there's no formal lease. Everyone listen very carefully. You may not remove doors. You may not remove her things. You may not change locks. You may not relocate her to a cellar to pressure her out. You may not get her benefits behind her back. You may not sign for her. And you may not use the phrase, for her own good, while trying to make your life easier at the cost of her dignity. You don't know us, Evelyn said, and her voice was flat with that Florida thunderstorm energy, hot, sudden, inevitable. I know people, Darlene said. And Margaret, dear, I want you to do a few things right now while I'm loud in their kitchen. 1. Text a written summary of your living arrangement to Sarah and Jason so there's a record. 2. Call Brookdale and cancel that intake. 3. If they try to move you, call 911 and say the words, self-help eviction. The officers will know what that means. 4. Lock your door. Locking doors in my house? Evelyn said. That's adorable. Watch me, I said, and I reached behind me and turned the little thumb lock on the knob. The click was polite, but it held. Sarah rubbed her eyes hard, red circles blooming. Darlene, we're drowning. We're just trying to make order, Darlene said. Yes, I've heard. Order that looks like your mother sleeping by a water heater while you assemble a nursery upstairs. Listen, I love a baby. I also love a boundary. You can have both, but not on top of her. Evelyn's smile sharpened. Since we're all being honest, she said, and she bent to unzip the front pocket of her suitcase. I could smell the perfume again, the one that always made me think of ladies who stand at makeup counters and spray strangers. She pulled out a manila folder and fanned it like a deck of cards. Margaret, here is a neat solution. A temporary guardianship and limited power of attorney for healthcare and finances while we transition you. It's standard. It gives us the ability to make decisions if you get upset. And here? She slid out another paper. A simple guest agreement clarifying you are not a tenant and that you will vacate the upstairs suite by Friday at 5 p.m. In exchange, you can stay in the downstairs for 30 days. And this, she added, like a dessert course, is a consent for Brookdale to discuss placement with us with your social. I already filled in your birth date to save you the trouble. There it was. The absurdity dressed like reason. A stack of documents like a stack of bricks to wall me in. My body did something I didn't expect. It laughed, not loud. But it rose up out of me like a fizz. Absolutely not, I said, and I felt the words ring off the cabinets. My no was a bridge. It had structure. It had cables. I stood on it. Margaret, Jason said, hands up. Let's just read. No, I repeated. Jason, look at me. He did. I have loved you like my son. The first pot roast I made after Frank died, you took a second helping when nobody else wanted to eat in a quiet house. And you looked at me and said, "This is home, Mom. Do not ask me to sign a piece of paper that takes away my voice so your mother can sleep upstairs." No. Sarah made a little sound, like a door slipping off a hinge. It's temporary, she said weakly. No, I said again. Temporary is the weather. This is a weather pattern. And if I sign those, it will forecast the rest of my life. Evelyn placed the papers flat on the counter and smoothed them with her palm, aligning the edges like someone who enjoys controlling small things because big things control her. We are making it easier, she said. For you, for everyone. We will manage your appointments. We will handle your mail. We will keep you from making mistakes. You can knit. You can watch your programs. We will bring Liam down to see you. I don't live in a stadium, I said. You don't bring people down to see me like I'm between periods. Sign, she said softly. Be gracious. I looked at Sarah. This is the part where I ask you to be my daughter, I said. Not Jason's wife, not Evelyn's helper. My daughter. Tell them to put the papers away. Sarah's throat moved. She took a breath. I watched the struggle like it was happening behind her eyes, and in a way it was. Mom, she said, and my hope rose like a hand on a pew. Maybe we sign something for now. Just so things don't get out of control. Just to keep the peace. And there I learned something about peace. It is sometimes just the quiet of people giving in. Okay, I said. That answers that. Darlene exhaled, the sound crisp. Margaret, you call Brookdale now. On speaker. I will be here like a pit bull in pearls. I hit recent calls and scrolled. Sarah's phone had the reminder. The number was there like a map pin. I clicked. It rang twice. Brookdale Senior Living Intake Coordination, this is Ashley. A bright voice said, the kind that smiles for a living. How can I help you? Hi, Ashley, I said, as pleasantly as the person you're about to disappoint. This is Margaret Thatcher. I'm calling to cancel the 2 o'clock intake that was scheduled under my name. I did not authorize it. Do not speak to anyone about me unless I am present. I will be reporting any attempt to enroll me without consent. A beat. Paper rustled. Oh, Ashley said. I see your file here. It was placed by a Sarah Collins, family member? Daughter, I said. Under stress, under influence, cancel it. I can make a note that you are declining, she said, voice careful now. We don't enroll anyone without consent. Do you offer referral stipends to family members for successful placements? I asked, keeping my tone like I was asking about free mints at the bank. Ma'am, Ashley said, a little flustered, we have partnerships with placement services. Sometimes communities offer referral fees for professionals, not usually family. I can't speak to specifics. You just did, I said. Cancel it. I'm marking it now, she said, keys clicking. Done. You should not receive further calls. If you do, please ask for me and I'll fix it. Thank you, I said, and then I hung up. I met Evelyn's eyes and watched the smallest flicker of annoyance flash like a fish. She had lost a lever. She put a pen on the papers. A nice pen. She probably buys pens like some women buy shoes. She slid the guest agreement closer. This one, she said, almost coaxing, this one is just clarification. So there are no misunderstandings. So we all know the rules. So you cannot later claim rights you do not have. You mean so you can move me without worrying I'll slow you down, I said. Language, she said. The words you choose always make you the victim. It's unattractive. Evelyn, Darlene said, and her voice slid lower. I would tread very carefully if I were you. I'm not scared of an usher with a clipboard, she snapped. I'm not an usher, Darlene said. I'm the lady who knows the sheriff's wife and the reporter at the local paper and the director of the area agency on aging. I can get you in a paragraph faster than you can move a nightstand. Jason dropped his hand. Enough, he said, and finally his voice had gravel. Mom, Evelyn, put the papers away. Please. Evelyn turned to him, incredulous. Jason, you let her run you. You let him. She flicked a glance at the phone. Run you. We're making a plan and you're folding. It's not about folding, he said, but he was already folding. He took the papers and stacked them neatly, not putting them away, just stopping the spread. His compromise was always tidiness. Evelyn clicked her tongue and then went to the stairs and shouted, Robert! Or maybe she said Jason again. The way she pitched syllables made everything sound like a summons. The name that came back was a stranger. Seth. A man in a polo with Neely stitched over his breast stepped through the front door, which Jason hadn't even closed all the way. The universe had decided to send me props. Hey, Mrs. Collins, Seth said, tentative, eyes darting to the cypress green wall we painted last summer and then to my door. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on 40 was an absolute, use a different entrance, I said. The stage is elsewhere. Evelyn smiled. Don't mind the turmoil. We're moving forward. We're going to take the door off the hinges to make it easier for you to work. Jason, get the drill. There. There was the indecency. Naked. Take the door. Remove the symbol, the bone, the boundary. Make me spill into a hallway where my life could be tripped over and boxed. No, I said, and the word came from my feet. Evelyn breezed past me the way people walk by TSA signs, like rules were for others. Her perfume punched the air. She reached for my doorknob, fingers French manicured and sure. I slid between her and the wood and put my palm flat against the blue, the way you touch a sleeping child's forehead. It was cool. It did not care that I was shaking. Touch this door, I said, and I will call the police. Jason had the drill in his hand because of course he did. He always cleans up with action. He stopped, though, a few feet from me, like a boy faced with a dog that might bite or might lick. Jason, I said, if you unscrew a hinge on this door because your mother told you to, you will be unscrewing something else in me that you cannot put back. He swallowed. The drill whined once, a nervous squeak. He set it on the counter. Evelyn took a breath like she'd taken one before in a courtroom or a hospital or a man's office, one that stiffened everything she owned. You'll be hearing from a lawyer, she said quietly. You're trespassing in a room that is not yours. My paint paid for it, I said. My bed warmed it. My prayers thickened the air. It is mine in all the ways that matter. Not legal ones, she snapped. I have those too, I said. I have months of proof that I pay. That I was invited. That I am a tenant in all but lease. That you tried to move me like a chair. I have your intake on her phone. I have your papers on my counter. And now I have a witness with a company polo ready to say you hired him to deconstruct my space. Seth, I said, turning to him, do you like being in court? Seth blinked, eyes wide as the little smiley face on the in-and-out board at the dentist. I don't, he stammered. I install shelves. Not today, I said. You can measure the hallway. It's nice and neutral. He hovered for a second, then back toward the door. I can come back, he said, to no one in particular, and then he was gone, the door yawning before it clicked shut. Evelyn's mouth was a flat line. Fine, she said. If you want to make this ugly, we can make it ugly. Sarah, call the bank. Tell them to stop accepting her transfers. She's living here for free if she won't cooperate. We'll document her freeloading. Sarah stared at her. Mom, stop, she whispered, and the word was so small I might have missed it if I weren't trained to hear small things, like the drip in a sink. Darlene's voice cut in. Margaret, text them now. Say, per our arrangement, I contribute X monthly and provide childcare A, B, C. I do not consent to relocation. Any attempt to remove my door or possessions will be reported as unlawful eviction. Then take a picture of the door, again, with a timestamp, and send it to me. I typed with thumbs that might as well have been calligraphy nibs. Years of grocery lists make you nimble. I hit send. The 3 bubbles came up, then disappeared on Sarah's phone like fish dipping below the surface. No response. Evelyn leaned closer, close enough that I could see the little constellation of freckles the sun had left near the corner of her mouth. Sign the papers, Margaret, she said. Or you can pack your things today and leave. Pack what you can carry. We'll send the rest after Christmas. There it was, the last indecent proposition, unclothed. Leave now with your life tucked under your arm like a coat, while we carve up what's left at our leisure. I did not step back. I did not flinch. No, I said. I am not going to sign away my personhood in my daughter's kitchen to my daughter's mother-in-law so you can have a suite with a view. I am not packing. I am not leaving. If you put a hand on my door, I will call 911. If you attempt to move me to the basement, I will sit down on this tile and I will scream and the cul-de-sac will come. And they will come, Evelyn, because they love drama more than they love mowing their lawn to regulation height, and they will film it. And your performance will be the one that gets edited for Facebook. I turned to Jason. Do you hear me? Do you see me? This is the man I thought you were. The one who put his body between a drunk at the church picnic and the teenagers when he was 25. Don't make me do your job. Stand up. Jason looked at me, then at his mother, then at Sarah. He was a metronome that had lost its setting. I can't pick, he said, small. And there was my answer. The world went very quiet. It was the kind of quiet where you hear the blood in your ears and the refrigerator cycling and some child 3 houses down laughing at a cartoon. Something in me shifted. It wasn't a crack. It wasn't a break. It was a hinge. All right, I said softly. Let me tell everyone the truth they don't want to hear. I looked at Evelyn first because the sharpest knife needs to go into the hardest surface. You don't want a suite, I said. You want a son. You want him the way he was at 10, saying yes without questions. You saw me here and felt the gravity you think you paid for changing orbit, and you couldn't stand it. You call it order, but it's just control with makeup on. You collect rooms the way some women collect hearts. You want to be indispensable because the world has made you feel disposable in ways you can't admit. Your condo board made you feel small. Your bank account made you feel anxious. The weather made you feel old. So you came here to this house like a general and decided to move pieces until your feelings changed. But here's the twist you didn't plan for. I am a piece that talks. Her face didn't move. Her hands did. They tightened on the countertop until her knuckles went white. And Jason, I said, swiveling. He lifted his chin, and I saw the boy in him, the one with skinned knees walking home with a band instrument too big for his arms. You think neutrality is nobility. It's not. It's cowardice in a nice shirt. You can't be Switzerland in your own home when the battle is your wife and your mother and the woman who braided your son's hair because he begged. Pick a side, or don't be surprised when there is no side left to pick, because the people who needed you built their own fort. He nodded once, a tiny wounded movement that might one day grow into a spine. And Sarah, I said, and here I had to swallow, because she is my work and my ache. You used to say what you wanted and then go for it like a bird that had seen a window and was sure it could slip through the opening. Somewhere you decided wanting made you selfish and asking for help made you weak. So you outsourced both to the loudest person nearby. You are drowning, I know. There is a baby-shaped buoy on your horizon, and you think if you swim toward it, you'll be saved. But your arms are tired because you've been carrying everyone's expectations like wet towels. You cannot hand me to a facility like a bag you don't have room for in the trunk. I will not go neatly so your life can look neat. She started to cry again, tears silent this time, the kind that make you look young and old at once. Evelyn tapped the pen on the counter like a judge. This is ridiculous, she said. Sign or leave. I felt something sharp and clean slice through me. It wasn't anger that had been in the room for hours. It was clarity. I picked up the suitcase with the Florida tag. It was heavier than it looked, and I loved that about it. It had scar tissue. I turned it so the tag faced me. Evelyn, bold. I pulled a Sharpie from the junk drawer. There is always a Sharpie in a junk drawer if God is merciful. And I drew a line through her name. Slow. Neat. Underneath I wrote, Return to sender. I set the suitcase down in the hall, turned it toward the stairs. This isn't your room, I said. You may not plant a suitcase in front of my door to stake claim like it's a flag on the moon. Your name is not a deed. Evelyn stared at the tag as if I'd written a curse. You're childish, she said. You're acting like a teenager. I missed my teenage rebellion, I said. I was busy raising the one who was blasting Alanis Morissette in her room and slamming doors. I am here at 67 with a delayed reaction, and it is not cute, and it is not quiet, and I do not care. She moved then, fast, reaching for the doorknob. Her nails clicked against the brass. The space between us narrowed to breath and paint. I stepped into the doorway, my shoulders widening like a gymnast at a beam. Don't, I said. Don't make me call. Call, she spat. Call your church. Call your ladies. Call the police. Tell them an old woman is refusing to be rational. Enjoy the show. So I called. I picked up the phone, pressed the numbers I have only pressed twice in my life. Once when Frank's chest didn't rise, and once when a neighbor's garage was on fire. The operator answered crisp. I didn't have to fake fear. It was there, but it was shaped differently now. It was anger's cousin, ready to help move the furniture. My name is Margaret Thatcher, I said. I live at 220 Maple Spur. The people I live with are attempting to remove the door to my room and relocate me to the basement against my will as a means to make me leave. They have scheduled an intake at a facility without my consent. They are presenting me legal papers to sign away my rights. I have paid into the household and have lived here for months. I am a tenant. This is a self-help eviction attempt. I am requesting an officer. Is there an immediate threat to your safety? The operator asked, calm. They are at my door, I said. They are planning to take it off the hinges. We're dispatching, she said. Please stay on the line. I put the call on speaker and set it on the counter. The room felt different immediately. Emergencies are a kind of weather. Evelyn laughed, brittle. You called the police on your family? No, I said. I called the police on someone trying to take my door. The operator came back. An officer will arrive within 10 minutes, she said. Please do not engage if it escalates. Stay safe. Thank you, I said, and I meant it like a prayer because sometimes the thing you worship is structure. We all stood there and breathed and listened to the little hums of a house. Liam's sneakers were still at the door, tongues up. My recipe box sat on the counter like a witness in pearls. The light through the window had gone from the pearly morning to the harder clarity of noon. Evelyn backed away a step, then another. It is hard to argue with a uniform that isn't even there yet. But she wasn't done. You could feel it, the coil. She made one more lunge, the last flail of a person who cannot imagine not winning. How about a compromise? She said, voice falsely bright, a tone that sold timeshares and gym memberships. Sign the guest agreement and the healthcare power only. Keep your finances if you insist on hoarding your little transfers. Agree to vacate by January 1st. We'll move the crib in then. You can keep a small dresser upstairs with your bones under lock if it makes you feel attached. And in return, I will give you the master suite until Friday. Consider it a gesture. I will sleep in the basement for 2 nights. God help me with my allergies, and you will experience the generosity you refuse to see. It was a marvel how she wrapped cruelty in wrapping paper. Hand me the papers and the suite, as if a view of the cul-de-sac made shackles into bracelets. No, I said. The word had weight now. It fell and dented the floor. Then you leave now, she said. And if you call your church to collect you like a lost cat, remember who fed you. I turned to Sarah. It was my last appeal. The little court in me wanted to give everyone their chance to be redeemed. Say no to her, I said. Tell her to stop. Tell her to take her suitcase and her papers and put them on her bed. Her bed, in the guest room that is not mine. Tell her you promised me a door and you don't break promises here. Sarah's mouth twisted like she was trying to pry something loose with her teeth. She looked at Evelyn. She looked at Jason. She looked at me, and for a second I saw her at 8. Frog pajamas, holding a book at the top of the stairs, asking if she could sleep in our bed because the thunder sounded like dragons. I can't, she whispered. Not like this. I can't go against her. Not when you need her money. I finished for her gently, and her flinch told me I had hit the exact nail. Her money, her approval, her babysitting, her willingness to pick up Liam from karate when you are stuck. I know the math. I have done it in my head so many nights I could build you a ledger, but you are making a choice, and I want you to know you are making it. The doorbell rang. It was vibrational. You could feel it in the bottom of your feet. We all froze like a still life of sins. Jason went to the door. The tall officer who came in had the same air as Darlene, the air of someone who knows the rules and enjoys the room they make. His name tag said Hendricks. He took in the scene in a sweep, the suitcase in the hall tagged like a monarch, my hand on the paint, the papers on the counter, the drill with its wire coiled like a question mark. Afternoon, folks, he said. We got a call about a civil issue. Let's all keep our voices low for me. Evelyn smiled a court smile. Off, Hendricks, is it? This is a family disagreement. We don't need law enforcement in our little drama. If there's a door involved, you do, he said. Ma'am? He looked at me. I live here, I said. I have my own room. My things are here. I pay money and provide childcare. Today they told me to move to the basement. They scheduled an intake at a facility without my consent. They are presenting me papers to sign, including a guest agreement saying I'm not a tenant and that I'll vacate in 3 days, and they are attempting to remove my door from its hinges. Hendricks turned to the drill like he was making sure his report had a prop. Who planned to remove the door? No one answered. Silence can be an answer. Okay, he said. In this state, removing doors and relocating residents without legal process counts as a self-help eviction. That's not legal. If she's been here and has contributed, which sounds like she has, she enjoys tenant protections. If you want her out, you'll go through civil court and give proper notice. But you can't lock her out, move her things, or take her door. Understand? Evelyn's mouth compressed. Understood, she said through teeth. Hendricks nodded at me. Ma'am, do you feel safe right now? I feel witnessed, I said. That will do. He gave a small smile, like the kind you give when you watch someone decide not to fall. Good. If there's any more trouble today, call back. I'll be in the neighborhood. He left, and the air rushed back like a tide. Evelyn spoke, soft, almost tender, which was worse than harsh. This isn't over, she said. If you want a war, we'll war. I can wait. January comes, babies come, people forget. You will tire of standing guard at a door. You will slip. Maybe, I said, but not today. She picked up her suitcase, the one now labeled like a returned package, and for a second I thought she might run up the stairs and plant it again just to show me her calves still worked. Instead, she put it neatly at the base of the steps, as if to say, see? I can be civilized. It looked ridiculous with its tag. It looked like a dog wearing a cone. She gathered her papers with a sweep, tapping them into a stack with her nails. Jason, she said, we're going to the bank. We're closing the joint card, and we are getting the name on every bill to one we can control. Jason nodded. Automatic. He has always been good at errands. Sarah, she said, call Brookdale and tell them your mother interfered. Ask for a different coordinator. We'll reschedule. Sarah didn't move. She looked at me with eyes that said, I am lost, and I hate that I am lost, and I hate that you can see it. No, she said, and the word was so little I almost missed it. Not today. It wasn't a revolution, it was a pinprick, but it let in light. Evelyn shrugged. Fine, she said. We'll do it tomorrow. She and Jason went out the door, papers tucked like a weapon, the suitcase glinting at the base of the stairs like a dare. The sound of their car starting was somehow both a relief and a threat. When the door thudded, Darlene whistled through the phone. Well, she said, you kicked the anthill. I called the law, I said, and my voice shook then, now that the immediate danger had slid off the table like a hot pan. My hands are still buzzing. That's adrenaline, she said. Run it through. Walk to the mailbox. Toss something heavy. Or better. Write. Text me your summary. And put a chair under that doorknob. Not because the lock won't hold, but because the chair will make you feel like you built a barricade with your grandmother. I dragged a chair over and wedged it under the knob, and it was ridiculous, and it was perfect. Darlene, I said, if they call Brookdale again, I'll be at the intake if there ever is one, she said. I will wear pearls and carry a file folder with more tabs than a librarian. I will bring Pastor Mike's business card, and I will say the words undue influence until they echo. But we're not there yet. Right now, you breathe and you eat something. You haven't eaten since toast because I know you. She was right. The toast sat like a coaster in my stomach. I reached for the pot roast in the fridge out of muscle memory, then laughed at my own brain. Comforting but pedestrian. I slapped together a peanut butter and jelly, which is what you eat when you are 7 and when you are 67 and need to remind your mouth about sweetness. Sarah stood there, rubbing her arms like she was cold, even though the house was a steady 72. I don't know what I'm doing, she said, voice a rope fraying. I don't know who I am trying to make happy. Everyone, I said, which is the fastest way to make no one happy. I wanted it tidy, she whispered. Tidy is a liar, I said. It's a ribbon you tie around a mess so people compliment the bow. She gave a watery half smile. You always have a sentence. That's what you raised me on, I said, and she laughed then, a real one, despite herself. We stood in the kitchen with the refrigerator hum and the empty places where things go when they're in the dishwasher. The room felt like an arena after the gladiators have left. There's blood, sure, but there's also sawdust, and if you sweep, life will put chairs back. Evelyn will come back harder, Sarah said. She always does. I will too, I said, but I will come back smarter. I will call the area agency on aging. I will find an elder law clinic. I will ask Pastor Mike for a mediator. I will make copies of everything and label them in a handwriting even your mother can't correct. Sarah nodded, slow, like a reluctant student absorbing a formula. I'm sorry, she said. The words were tiny and enormous. Don't be sorry because you got caught, I said, and she flinched because it was fair. Be sorry because you looked at your life and decided I was the thing to cut, and then decide differently. She nodded again, more sure. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She went upstairs then, not to my room, not to Evelyn's wish, but to her own. And I heard her close the door. And for a second I was jealous, because I love a good door now more than I ever have. But then I looked at mine. The blue was scuffed near the bottom where my shoe had bumped it 100 times. The nick by the latch caught light. It was not perfect. Neither was I. Darlene sighed into the phone. I'm coming over, she said. You don't have to, I said, because the part of me that survived the 70s by doing it all herself still peeks out. I'm coming, she said. I'll bring my clipboard so I look official when the HOA president walks by. And I'm bringing lemon squares because sugar is a glue. She hung up. I ate my sandwich. I took pictures of the door and of the papers and of the suitcase. I texted myself, then Darlene. Then I forwarded the Brookdale cancellation confirmation Ashley emailed, because in the theater of the cul-de-sac, props matter. When the doorbell rang again, it wasn't police. It was the neighbor, Tracy, with a Tupperware of deviled eggs because someone else's drama always makes Southerners feed you, even when we live above the Mason-Dixon line. She looked over my shoulder, eyes flicking to the blue. You okay? She asked, whispering like a sitcom neighbor. I am, I said, for today. She nodded and left the eggs and a little gossip about HOA elections and the way Evelyn had introduced herself at the newsletter folding like she'd owned the printer. Information is currency. Tracy paid in small bills. I carried the eggs in, set them on the counter, and then did something small that felt big. I slid my notebook under my recipe box like a foundation under a house. Then I dug in the drawer for painter's tape and stuck a small square on the edge of the door and wrote, Margaret's. It was childish. It was evidence. It was mine. The afternoon stretched in front of me, full of new hazards and small calms. I knew the war wasn't over. Wars are never clean. They flare and they smolder. There would be papers again. There would be conversations where words floated ahead of their speakers like balloons. There would be nights where I stared at the ceiling and counted the things I could lose. But for the first time in weeks, I had something that felt like a plan and a posture. I was not going to wait to be moved. I was going to move parts of the world, small as they were, so that the big parts couldn't roll over me without resistance. I was going to say no, the kind of no that plants. I washed my plate. The water ran hot, then hotter. I thought of Frank, of his slow and steady, of his pencil lines. I thought of Sarah at 8 and Sarah at 35. I thought of Jason with his yes and of Evelyn with her hunger dressed up as order. I thought of my mother, who once told me in a trivial argument about wallpaper, choose what you can live with. I can live with blue. I can live with being loud when I need to be. I cannot live in a basement I'm sent to like a naughty teenager while my name is used on a form to call me gone. When Darlene knocked and came in without waiting, because that's what you earn when you share pews and casseroles and grief, I felt that hand at the small of my back again. She put her bag on the counter and her glasses on her nose. Okay, she said, businesslike and bright. Let's make you harder to move. We sat, we wrote, we printed, we called the agency. We put the officer's card in a sleeve. We organized receipts. We planned what to say when Evelyn came back with a lawyer, because she would. I could feel her engine revving even from across town. And as we worked, I heard upstairs the creak of Sarah's steps, the sound of a drawer, the sigh of a woman deciding not to be a child today. I heard the ghost of Liam's laugh in the banister. I heard my door hold. At 4, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Thatcher, it read. This is Ashley from Brookdale. Just confirming we have canceled the intake as requested. Please reach out if you need resources. We also have a caregiver support group that meets Thursdays. I laughed, then saved the number, because I am not fool enough to hurt the woman who just gave me a receipt that says I exist. Thank you, I wrote back. If I come, I'll bring lemon squares. Darlene looked at the text, then at me, then at the door. You know what you did today? She asked. I kept a door, I said. You changed the math, she said. You told them there's a variable they didn't account for. You. The sun slid toward the ridge of houses like a coin rolling to a stop. The light made the blue on my door deeper. It looked like sky you could fall into and not mind the falling. When the front door opened again after 5 and Evelyn stepped in, alone this time, without Jason, which told me as much as any statement, she didn't speak at first. She set her purse on the hall table, ran a finger along the edge like she was checking for dust. She looked at Darlene, at the file folder, and the lemon squares arranged like evidence and comfort on the counter. Her eyes went to the suitcase at the stairs. The tag stared back at her. Return to sender. She lifted the handle and rolled it up, the wheels clicking on each stair, a concession dressed as efficiency. At the top, she paused and looked down. This fight will cost you, she said. Not to any one of us, not even to the door, to the house, to the idea of what a house is. I've paid bigger prices, I said, and gotten more for my money. She didn't respond. She went down the hall to the end room, the one that had been Jason's office, and then a nursery that never was, and then a guest room that was going to be hers. She shut the door. It made a sound that wasn't as good as my door's sound. I noticed, and loving that difference felt like a sin and a sacrament. Darlene touched my hand. There's your spark, she said. I saw the match, I said. I struck it. And tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow, I said, and my voice was almost a whisper, but it did not shake. I buy a deadbolt. Tomorrow, I buy a deadbolt. I said it like an incantation, and then I did exactly what I said. I went to the hardware store that afternoon like a woman on a mission, because part of reclaiming a life is small practicalities. A lock that turns the heat of other people's expectations into something that clicks shut. The clerk with the name tag that said Mike. Everyone in small towns has a Mike, I think. As if God reserved a line of name tags for practical kindness. helped me pick a grade 3 deadbolt and a heavy brass strike plate. I watched him drill, and watched the metal settle into my door the way a promise settles into bone. It cost money. I paid for it with a card that had my name on it and the Social Security deposit on speed dial. When the deadbolt turned for the first time and the thumb latch made that small, satisfying sound, I think something in the house sighed and decided to stay. But locks are only useful if the rest of the law has your back. Darlene came over with her clipboard and a thermos and a dossier that looked like it belonged to a small bureaucracy of saints. "Good," she said when she saw the deadbolt. "Now let's make you legally immovable." We made calls. We printed copies of everything like we were preparing a ledger for the heavens. Receipts stacked beside recipe cards, texts with the "come, please" in all caps next to bank transfers with my name. The officer's little card Hendrix had given me tucked under the recipe box like a talisman. We wrote notes about the day Seth had come with the measuring tape and of Evelyn's words. Guessed, dead weight, because the things people say in anger leave fingerprints. Darlene typed with impressive speed, her thumbs like hammers. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "You never did. Stop pretending you did." I laughed at her and then I cried a little, because pretending I could do everything alone was a habit, and habits have their own inertia. Darlene called the area agency on aging first, walked me through the intake at the senior services, and then called 2 numbers she protected like good recipes. "An elder law clinic at the university will take you," she told me, "and the legal aid elder unit has a pro bono attorney who loves to put paperwork in tyrants' teeth." The woman who answered at the elder law clinic was exactly how you'd imagine a lawyer who spends her days balancing hearts and statutes, direct, efficient, with a laugh that made me feel competent even before I had become so. Her name was Rachel Alvarez. She asked me questions that were surgical and kind. How long had I lived here? What had I contributed? Could I show bank records? She wanted the officer's details. Darlene on the phone as witness, photographs of the door, screenshots of texts, the Brookdale cancellation, everything. "I can file an emergency ex parte motion," Rachel said, "if we can show imminent risk. Self-help eviction is one of the easiest emergencies to prove if you have an officer's report and proof of occupancy and contributions. We can get a temporary restraining order to stop them from removing your door or moving you, and we'll ask the court for a preliminary injunction so you have protection while the full hearing is scheduled." "Do that," I said. It felt strange, the kind of power that comes from knowing the words that move men in suits to write on letterhead. "Do it now. Bring everything by the clinic this afternoon," she said. "I'll take it, I'll put it together. If we need a signature, you can sign an affidavit. We'll ask for service by the sheriff and for a hearing in short order." We did what she said. Darlene drove me across town with lemon squares tucked like confidence in a napkin. I carried my notebook, the photographs, my texts, the police officer's card, the Brookdale cancellation email Ashley sent. Rachel greeted us in an office that smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner, and she did what lawyers do when they are on your side. She organized facts into a narrative that judges can hold. "You've done what most people never do," she said, looking at the stack of receipts. "You documented. That changes everything." By evening, a clerk's stamp and a judge's tentative signature lived in my email. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. It read in plain, unsexy legal language that nevertheless felt like armor. Defendants were enjoined from locking plaintiff out, removing doors, changing locks, relocating plaintiff, initiating intake procedures at any facility without the plaintiff's voluntary and informed consent, or otherwise interfering with her personal property and finances pending further hearing. It required them to preserve the status quo and set a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. The sheriff would serve the order personally. Before I could digest the relief, the House told me a truth I had half known. When you get a TRO against family, they either buckle or they escalate. Evelyn chose escalation. She called my number. Her voice was the same perfume-slick voice I'd been hearing for 2 days. But behind it there was an edge as if her nerves had been sanded by panic. "You can't do this," she told me. "You can't drag my son and daughter-in-law into court. Think of the shame. Think of the baby. Think of the law," I said. "Think of the officer who told me removing doors is a self-help eviction. Think of the legal consequences for violating a judge's order." She breathed like someone running out of ground to stand on. "You always use words like you're a plaintiff in a drama. Be reasonable. There are options." "Those options involved your suitcase on my stair," I replied, "and a man with a tape measure." I'm not trading my life for options wrapped in Monopoly money. Your stubbornness will cost you, she hissed. And if I had been younger, I might have flinched at the threat. Instead, I set the phone down and looked at the deadbolt, and at the lemon-smeared napkin Darlene still had clenched in her hand like a prayer. Evelyn's escalation took other forms, too. She called Jason at work and asked him to close the joint card, to stop accepting transfers she insisted weren't being made as charity, but as generous contributions to the household. She tried to call Brookdale again. There are always people willing to listen to the loud and certain and a little misleading. She left a voice message for one of the HOA members in which she painted me as a disruptive guest and herself as the person with the family's best interest at heart. She mailed a letter to the local paper's letters section on the importance of order in family homes and copied a few PTA friends. Things that looked like strategy to her were small explosions that told me who had been hiding what. Rachel, Darlene, and I put each of those calls into the dossier. The voicemail was preserved. The call log of Brookdale showed only the cancellation. The HOA letter was marked as received. Tracy, the neighbor, had kept hers because she liked gossip like some people keep buttons. Meanwhile, inside the kitchen where the blue door was a small, righteous moon, something else happened. Jason came to sit with me one evening when the twilight was a soft bruise against the windows. He had a red line on his forehead from worry and a softness in his jaw I hadn't seen in him in a while, like a man who is learning what being a son and being a husband can contradict. "I'm sorry," he said, which was a small and tender thing. I didn't see how it would look. I thought I was helping. You thought you'd make your life less complicated, I said. And you thought that would solve everything. He took my hand. For the first time since all of this began, his hand felt like a real bridge. "I don't want to be the guy who lets his mother run over people," he said softly. "But I also don't want to lose my wife over money and my mother over pride. I'm stuck. You can be in the middle of two people and still pick to do the right thing," I said. "Pick who loves you unconditionally." He looked at the deadbolt. "I will go to the hearing," he said. "And I'll talk to Evelyn." Actions, finally. Words are a kind of currency. Courtrooms convert language into leverage. If someone didn't turn up with a change of heart, there would be a change of orders. 3 days later, the sheriff's deputy knocked at our door with the TRO in hand. He was polite and brisk, and when he said the words, "For your protection, ma'am," something heavy rolled off my shoulders. He served the order on Evelyn, who was, it turned out, exactly as ungracious in person as she had been in her voice messages. She read the paper like she was auditioning for outrage and then folded it into her purse like a card that had been pulled from a magic trick. "You can't make this stick," she said to me in front of the deputy. "You can't make them follow." "Judge's signature is pretty sticky," the deputy said, and left before she could retort. Evelyn left too, but not without planting one more little flag. She gathered her purse and looked at me as if she had pity in stock, and I was now a line on the thrift store's price tag. "You win today," she said. "You'll tire. People forget. We will be back. Remember that you're loved. By me, by the family. Think of your options." She went out, and the sound of her car doors closing had the duplicity of a hymn. I let the house hold that sound, then I closed my notebook. You asked me to step back, to gain perspective. So I did. I let the paperwork breathe. I let Rachel do the things lawyers do. File pleadings, set dates, craft orders so they hold like mortar. I let the sheriff stand as a visible reminder that the law had an index finger now pointing at anyone who thought they could move a person like furniture. And while I stepped back, Evelyn, untempered and unwise, revealed more. She escalated not only through phone calls, but through social maneuvering. She tried to bribe a neighbor with a community gathering, where she could spin her version of events. She made a clumsy attempt to contact an assisted living placement with another name. She messaged photos of my recipe box to a group chat with a caption that read, "Is this normal?" Panic is a funny thing. It makes people tidy their moral houses the way certain women fold towels to hide mildew. Evelyn's panic showed a desperation I hadn't yet fully seen. The woman who told me she grew up with olive trees had debts. The woman who called names in marble voices had holes in her backyard bank account. The more she tried to wrestle control, the more she showed bone, and bone is easier to navigate than smoke. The day of the preliminary hearing came like a small miracle. The courthouse smelled of institutional lemon and hand sanitizer. Darlene came with me, her hair pinched into something severe that made her look like a commander of ushers. Rachel had printed copies of every text, every transfer, every email. Pastor Mike, who could not be a legal witness but could be a moral thunderbolt, sat in the second row like a man ready to bless documents. Tracy from next door was there too, wearing tears and deviled egg confidence. She had brought a neighbor who had seen Evelyn at a community fundraiser and who said under oath that Evelyn's suitcase had been left glaring at the base of our stairs like a flag. The officer Hendricks testified about the conversation at my kitchen counter, and his testimony added a kind of municipal gravity to the paper stack. Evelyn arrived with a woman in an impeccably tailored suit and a file that smelled like expensive paper. Her suit made Evelyn look as if she'd swallowed a dictionary and still had room for appetite. She sat with Jason and Sarah in the front row. Sarah's eyes were rimmed in what might have been hope or fatigue, and when Rachel stood to speak, her voice was a clear thing that held people's attention. "Your Honor," she said, "we ask that the court preserve the status quo. The plaintiff has lived in the defendant's home for months. She has contributed financially, and she has formed tenancy-like relationships. There is evidence a self-help eviction was attempted, and that defendants had scheduled intake at an assisted living facility without plaintiff's consent. We ask for protective relief to prevent further interference and to deter conduct that effectively aims to strip plaintiff of her residence and control over her personal effects." The judge, an alderman of gray hair and mercy, read the papers and then looked at me through half-moon glasses. "Ms. Thatcher," he said, "are you presently in fear of being moved against your will?" "I am afraid of being made into luggage," I said. It was the first time I used the word luggage in court, and everyone chuckled because the idea of a septuagenarian being folded into a trunk has something cartoonish about it. But it is also merchandising truth. He issued a preliminary injunction extending the TRO until the full trial, but with additional teeth. Defendants were ordered to refrain from misrepresenting plaintiff's consent to third parties, to return any documents attempted to be signed in plaintiff's name, and to provide the court with a full disclosure of any payments or bonuses related to facilities that involved referral stipends. He set the discovery schedule and suggested, kindly, that mediation could be a civilizing step. Court is a sieve that separates whimpering from substance. What came out of that day's paperwork was a legal doctrine that was simple. You can't use me like I'm a convenience. You can't use your affection as collateral for your convenience. We walked out of the courthouse like a small battalion. Rachel hugged me once in the parking lot. "It's not over," she said, "but it's a start." I took the start and turned it into meaning. I went home and painted a thin, fresh line of blue along the edge of my door, not because it needed paint, but because it needed attention. I placed under my recipe box a new folder labeled Legal. I printed the court order and framed it in a cheap frame I found in a drawer. No law requires that a court order be graceful, but a framed paper is a piece of psychological architecture. Darlene brought a casserole that was for once pedestrian and perfect. We invited Pastor Mike over for tea and told him quietly the story of how the house had learned to stand up for itself. He crossed his hands in blessing and offered to be part of a mediated session if they would consider it. They did consider it, reluctantly. Evelyn agreed to mediation. That day, 2 weeks after the first suitcase, 1 week after the TRO, Sarah, Jason, Evelyn, Pastor Mike, Diane from the Elder Services, Rachel as my counsel, and Darlene sat at our kitchen table. The blue door watched like a calm moderator. Mediation is not melodrama. It's a kind of brokerage in human terms. People trade apologies or they trade paper. Evelyn started with a performance of indignation that, by the end, read like someone ironing out a brand new shirt. "I am sorry," she said, and then she looked at me. It wasn't a real, full-bore apology at first. It was a reconnaissance. "You were never my enemy, ever," I said quietly. "You never were. But you treated me like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. There's a difference. Love remembers names and rooms." She blinked. Something in her face curved like she had been hearing a tune and had finally identified its key. "I thought I was helping," she said, the sentence a small, collapsing thing. "I thought a plan would make everything better." "It makes things more predictable," said Pastor Mike. "But where you sought to simplify, you simplified someone out of existence." Jason's face crumpled, and for once he lifted a hand not to buffer, but to hold. "Mom," he said, I didn't see." Sarah looked at him then, and the eyes she turned on him were both release and accusation. "We can't do it again," she said. "We can't sign each other away for convenience." They all signed a document that day in our kitchen. a family covenant drafted by Rachel and mediated by Pastor Mike. It said, among other things, that any move to relocate me would require 30 days written notice, an independent assessment by the Area Agency on Aging, my informed consent, and the involvement of an impartial third party. It said Evelyn would not pursue referral arrangements with Brookdale or similar facilities involving my placement without transparent disclosure. It said that if there were any further disputes, the parties would first seek mediation and then court. It was not a miracle, it was a set of guardrails. But guardrails matter when you're walking along a precipice. The public element, the possibility that people would see the ugliness, was what moved Evelyn most. Diane from the agency had a quiet way of saying things that resembled truth and tripped pride. When she outlined the penalties for undue influence and for fraudulent attempts at obtaining funds or consent from an elder, Evelyn's jaw went tight. Reputation in a cul-de-sac is not nothing, and Evelyn's appetite for being seen as competent and in control was real income for her. In the days after mediation, small shifts occurred that felt like a thaw. Jason started to take responsibility for scheduling childcare without promising Evelyn things he didn't want to promise. He arranged for a sitter who was neither his mother's emissary nor a charity. Sarah stopped apologizing like it was penance and started apologizing like it was correction. "I'm sorry," she said to me one evening, and this time the apology came with teeth. "I shouldn't have tried to plan your life without you in it." "That's the kind of apology that changes houses," I told her. "Thank you." Evelyn, for her part, retreated to Florida after a week or so. She claimed allergies and an urgent condo repair. Her suitcase, returned to sender, went with her in a sensible heap. She called now and then, and sometimes her calls were civil. Once, almost shyly, she sent a box of local citrus and a note that said, "For your throat, dear." It was an olive branch, but one with a sticker on it. I kept the oranges and fed them to Darlene and told a story about how citrus sometimes tastes like victory. One morning, after the court's temporary injunction had held and after mediation had settled like sediment, I did something small and ceremonial. I bought a sapling, a little peach tree from the nursery. When I was married, when I had Frank and a yard full of horizons, I had a peach tree planted the year Sarah was born. That house was gone now, traded for convenience and a cheaper roof, but I like to think of continuity as a kind of rebellion. I carried the sapling to the backyard and dug a hole with hands that remembered dirt. I planted it where the afternoon sun would find it. I didn't invite anyone to watch. This was mine. Later that day, I hung a tiny brass plaque beside my blue door. It read, in handwriting that looked practiced and domestic, Margaret's. It was childish and necessary and true. I nailed it in myself because names have the power to stop people who would reduce you to a role. When the nail went in, the house felt anchored. The victory, the legal one and the moral one, was not that Evelyn disappeared. She did not. She came back to Thanksgiving with a pie she hadn't chosen the recipe for, and she sat near the mantel where she used to put her framed photos as if they had always belonged there. But there was a humility in how she passed the gravy that was new to her. Maybe the court's orders made a difference. Maybe the threat of public reprisal did. Maybe the thing that shifted the most was the way she found herself no longer able to command silence. There is a loneliness in being the loudest woman in a small arena. If you lose your audience, you listen. Jason and Sarah, too, changed. They started holding meetings, family meetings, that were a kind of boring, tender architecture. They asked me when I wanted dinner, and they told me when they needed help without presenting it as a bill. Sarah, who had once said, "This is not up for debate," to my face, now sat across from me and asked what I wanted. We made plans. We would have Liam on Tuesdays, and I would teach him how to tie a tie for prom, and they promised to never again pretend my mattress was something they could pick up and put in a trunk. Promise was the thin, human thread between us, and they were rebuilding it. The epitome of victory came in a small act that I keep in my pocket like a good receipt. A month after the hearing, there was a block party on Maple Spur where neighbors brought folding tables and paper plates and music that never hurt anyone. Liam ran around with a plastic sword. The teenagers manned the grill. Tracy brought a potato salad, as if she could feed away discord. In the middle of it all, with a son that had decided to bless suburban dinners, Sarah came to my blue door and knocked. I didn't expect her to come alone. I opened the door, and there she was with a pie and flour on her sleeve and a look in her eyes that was all apology and repair. "Can I bring Liam in to show him how to make his own peanut butter sandwich?" she asked. She didn't have to ask for permission to enter my room. She asked because, in asking, she acknowledged my sovereignty. Of course, I said. And I meant it like the dinner bell after a long day of storms. She came in, and for a moment we just stood with the pie between us like a small treaty. Mom, she said softly, thank you for not letting them take your door. Her voice was small and big at once. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong. It is a brave thing to be wrong and then be willing to be right, I said. We laughed because the sentence was true and because our family often falls into truth like tripping into water that refreshes. I brought out a little jar of my spices, the same rack Evelyn had rearranged in her 2 days here like a woman stacking trophies. I set it between us. Do you remember this oregano? I asked. I may be old-fashioned, but it's never failed me. She smelled the jar and smiled. It smells like home, she said. I'm sorry, and I want you to know I don't want to lose you. The real you. You do not get bullets like forgiveness. You hand them your time and your patience. We ate pie under the little blue light that paints everything gentle and ordinary. Outside, the block party hummed. Inside, the house held its breath and then let it go. There was a catharsis on the porch that evening I didn't tell anyone about because some things are private. After they left, after the dishes were stacked, after I locked the deadbolt and arranged the chair as a bit of extra theater, I opened the notebook where I'd kept all my receipts and my texts and the photographs that had become my evidence. I put a recipe card on top and slid a photograph of Frank under it, the one where he was mid-smile, hands full of work gloves, and we looked young and newly married and untested. I put my hand on the blue paint near the nick by the latch, the one Liam had made one summer when he was 5 years old, and exuberant and unaware of territorial things. I pressed my palm there and felt the brush strokes like fingerprints. I talked then, like a woman who had been in church and had a sermon and did not want to waste it. You can't make me into luggage, I told the door, the house, the quiet. You cannot call me guest and mean it like it's a verdict. Then I did something small and ceremonial. I took the lemon squares Darlene had left and set them in a dish. I carried them to Pastor Mike, and Pastor Mike blessed them like they were bread. I gave one to Jason, who confessed privately that he'd been scared of his mother and had been selfish in his fear. I gave one to Sarah, who cried a little and then laughed. I put the last one on the banister for Liam to find the next morning. Victory in my life wasn't a headline or a newspaper clipping. It wasn't even an order kept on paper. It was the stillness of my house with my life intact and the knowledge that people who would have moved me for convenience now had to sit across a table from me and be accountable. It was knowing I could leave and walk a stage at a courthouse and be heard, and that the hearing mattered. It was the peach sapling in my backyard. It was the deadbolt that turned with a soft, honest click every night. If you've watched this whole thing and something in you clenched, because family can be a blade and love can be co-opted into leverage, know this: there are ways out. There are laws and neighbors and churches and legal clinics and Darlene-like saints who will come and stand in your doorway. There are ways to make a radar of small things, texts, receipts, photos, that together make a map that a judge will read and sometimes rule in your favor. We are not fragile simply because we are older. We are seasoned. We have histories like houses, rooms with memories, and doors we painted ourselves. Do not ever allow anyone, no matter the relationship, to make you feel that your presence is indebtedness. You are not a temporary fixture in someone else's narrative. And one tiny practical thing: if you ever need help and you don't know where to start, call your area agency on aging. Call a local elder law clinic. Find a Darlene, keep your receipts, lock your door. This is how justice, small and stubborn, can show up at your kitchen counter with a clipboard and lemon squares. If this story moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who might need to know they're not alone, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to fight for a space that felt like yours? Where do you draw the line when family becomes convenience? Subscribe for more stories about boundaries, dignity, and the little domestic revolutions that change lives.